Maya Chen had always been invisible. At 17, she moved through the corridors of the Galactic Academy like a whisper, her small frame easily lost among the towering Zephyrians with their crystal blue skin and the massive Korgan students whose footsteps shook the metal floors, while other humans at the Academy made their presence known through loud voices and bold gestures. Maya preferred the quiet corners of the library, the empty training rooms during off hours, and the shadowy alcoves where she could observe without being observed. The Academy was humanity's greatest achievement in interstellar relations. Built on the neutral moon of Kepler 442c, it brought together the brightest young minds from 12 different species across the galaxy. Each species contributed their unique strengths to the collective knowledge pool. The Zephyrians excelled at energy manipulation. The Korgans dominated physical combat. The ethereal Wisp were masters of telepathic warfare, and the insectoid Thrakari possessed unmatched strategic planning abilities. Humans were considered the weakest link. They had no natural telepathy, no energy manipulation abilities, no enhanced physical strength, and no hive mind strategic advantages. What they did have was something the other species viewed with condescension: adaptability, and what the galactic community politely termed creative problem-solving. Though most species used less flattering descriptions behind closed doors, Maya embodied everything the other species found unremarkable about humanity. She stood barely 5 feet tall, spoke in soft tones that required others to lean in to hear her, and had never once raised her voice in any of her classes. During combat simulations, she was always among the first eliminated. In energy manipulation courses, her scores consistently ranked in the bottom percentile. Even in human history and culture classes, where she should have had a natural advantage, she rarely spoke up, preferring to listen while her more aggressive classmates debated and argued. Her dormitory roommate, Zara, 7 of the Zephyrian Crystal Collective, had stopped trying to include Maya in social gatherings after the 3rd week of the semester. "You are like watching grass grow," Zara, 7 had said with typical Zephyrian directness, her crystalline features glowing pale blue with mild frustration. "Perhaps you would be more comfortable in the archives with the dust and silence." The comment stung, but Maya had simply nodded and returned to her studies. She had grown accustomed to being overlooked, dismissed, and forgotten. Teachers called on her less frequently as the semester progressed. Group projects somehow organized themselves around her absence. Even the Academy's social media feeds, which featured highlights of student achievements and activities, seemed to capture everyone except her. But Maya had a secret that none of them knew. Every night, when the dormitories grew quiet and the artificial day cycle dimmed to simulate planetary darkness, she would slip away to the Academy's old training facilities in the basement levels. These rooms hadn't been updated in decades and were scheduled for decommission, but they still functioned well enough for her purposes. Here, in the solitude she craved, Maya practiced. Not the standard combat forms taught in class, not the energy manipulation techniques that came so naturally to other species, but something uniquely human. She had discovered it by accident during her first month at the Academy, when frustration with her poor performance had driven her to punch a wall. The blow should have broken her hand against the reinforced titanium composite. Instead, something had shifted in that moment of impact, something that felt like the universe itself had bent slightly to accommodate her anger. Night after night, Maya explored this strange phenomenon. She learned that human emotion, when properly focused and channeled, could interact with the quantum fields that permeated all matter. It wasn't energy manipulation as the Zephyrians understood it, and it wasn't the brute force that made Korgan so formidable. It was something else entirely, something that required the chaotic, unpredictable nature of human consciousness to function. Maya called it resonance fighting, though she wasn't sure if that was the proper term. By synchronizing her emotional state with the quantum fluctuations around her, she could make the impossible happen. A punch thrown in perfect emotional harmony could shatter materials that should have been impervious to her strength. A dodge executed with the right mental frequency could bend probability itself, making enemy attacks miss by margins that defied physics. The discovery had terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She spent months learning to control it, to channel different emotions for different effects. Anger created devastating attacks that could punch through armor plating. Fear heightened her reflexes to superhuman levels, allowing her to perceive and react to threats with impossible speed. Determination could make her immovable, rooting her to the ground like a mountain. And sadness, the emotion she knew best, could make her nearly invisible, bending light and perception around her until she became almost impossible to target. Maya documented everything in encrypted files hidden deep within her personal data storage. She recorded training sessions using jury-rigged equipment that she'd assembled from discarded components. She analyzed the quantum signatures of her abilities, trying to understand the scientific principles behind what she could do. But she told no one. The fear of being dismissed as delusional, or worse, being subjected to invasive testing by Academy scientists, kept her silent. The monthly Clash tournament was approaching, and Maya knew she should sign up. Every student was required to participate at least once per semester, and she had been avoiding it for months by citing various minor illnesses and scheduling conflicts. But her excuses were running thin, and her academic advisor had made it clear that continued avoidance would result in automatic failure for her combat assessment credits. The tournament was broadcast live across the galactic network. It served as both entertainment and a diplomatic showcase, demonstrating the Academy's success in training the next generation of galactic leaders. Winners gained prestige, scholarship opportunities, and fast-track placement into elite galactic peacekeeping forces. Losers, particularly those who lost spectacularly, often found their recordings becoming viral entertainment across multiple star systems. Maya had watched previous tournaments with a mixture of awe and dread. The displays of power were incredible to behold. She had seen Zephyrian students redirect stellar energy to create weapons of pure plasma. Korgan warriors had punched through reinforced bulkheads with their bare fists. Thrakari teams had executed strategies so complex and coordinated that they seemed to predict their opponents' moves before those opponents had made them. And then there were the humans who had competed previously. They fought with determination and creativity, using improvised weapons and unconventional tactics. Some had even managed respectable showings against supposedly superior opponents, but none had ever won a tournament, and several had provided the galactic community with months of entertainment as their defeats were replayed, analyzed, and mocked across social networks. Maya's human classmates treated the tournaments as an opportunity to prove that humanity belonged among the galactic powers. They trained aggressively, formed study groups to develop new strategies, and approached each match with the kind of fierce determination that had carried humanity from a single planet to membership in the Galactic Council. She admired their courage, but she also saw their fundamental mistake. They were trying to beat other species at their own games, using human determination to overcome superior natural abilities through sheer effort and creativity. It was admirable, but ultimately futile. You couldn't out-energy manipulate a Zephyrian, and you couldn't out-strategize a Thrakari hive mind through individual effort alone. But maybe, Maya thought as she lay in her narrow dormitory bed listening to Zara Seven's crystalline breathing, there was another way. Maybe the key wasn't to compete on their terms, but to change the game entirely. The sign-up deadline for the next tournament was tomorrow. Maya had been putting off the decision for weeks, but she knew she couldn't avoid it any longer. As she stared at the ceiling panels and listened to the quiet hum of the Academy's life support systems, she made her choice. She would enter the tournament, but she wouldn't fight like the other humans had fought. She wouldn't try to prove that humanity could match other species' natural advantages through determination and cleverness alone. Instead, she would show them something they had never seen before, something uniquely and impossibly human. Maya reached for her data tablet and navigated to the tournament registration page. Her finger hovered over the submit button for a long moment. Once she registered, there would be no backing out. The Academy's rules were strict about tournament participation, and withdrawal after registration resulted in automatic academic probation. More than that, though, registering meant exposing herself. For months, she had been content to remain invisible, to practice her strange abilities in secret while the galaxy continued to underestimate humanity. Competing would mean revealing everything she had learned, everything she had become. It would mean stepping out of the shadows and accepting whatever consequences followed. But it would also mean finally answering the question that had haunted her since that first accidental moment of resonance. Just how far could human potential actually reach when it stopped trying to imitate other species and started embracing what made it unique? Maya pressed submit. The confirmation message appeared immediately, officially registering her for the upcoming Galactic Academy Clash tournament. Her match was scheduled for the following week against Keth 9, a mid-tier Korgan warrior known for his methodical fighting style and impressive win record. As she set down the tablet and tried to sleep, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Excitement. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she wasn't trying to blend into the background or meet other species' expectations of what a human should be. She was preparing to show them something entirely new. Tomorrow, her real training would begin. The news of Maya's tournament registration spread through the academy with surprising speed. By breakfast the next morning, she could feel eyes following her as she moved through the cafeteria. Conversations paused when she passed, then resumed in hushed tones that she pretended not to notice. The attention made her skin crawl, but she forced herself to maintain her usual quiet demeanor. Maya Chen versus Keth 9. Her human classmate Derek announced as he dropped into the seat across from her, his breakfast tray clattering against the table. Are you insane? He's undefeated in 12 matches. His last opponent spent 3 days in the medical bay. Maya continued eating her synthesized protein meal, not looking up. Derek meant well, but his concern felt patronizing. Like everyone else, he saw only her surface. The small, quiet girl who never made waves. He had no idea what she was capable of, and she preferred it that way. I've seen his recordings, she said softly. He's good, but he has patterns. Derek laughed, but it sounded strained. Patterns? Maya, he's a Korgan. Their idea of strategy is to hit things until they stop moving. And he hits really, really hard. Other human students had begun to gather around their table, drawn by Derek's increasingly loud voice. Maya recognized most of them from her classes, though few had ever spoken to her directly. Now they looked at her with mixtures of curiosity, concern, and what might have been pity. Maybe you could request a different opponent, suggested Lisa, a third-year student who had competed in several tournaments herself. The matching system allows for academic accommodations. If you explain that you're not ready for someone of Keth 9's caliber, I don't want a different opponent, Maya said, her voice still quiet but carrying a note of finality that surprised them. I want to fight him. The group fell silent. In the background, she could hear other conversations continuing, the multi-tonal harmonics of Zephyrian speech mixing with the deep rumbles of Korgan voices and the clicking chittering of Thrakari communication. The Academy's universal translators handled the linguistic differences, but each species' natural vocal patterns created a unique acoustic signature that Maya had learned to recognize and find comforting. Look, Derek said, leaning forward and lowering his voice. I know you want to prove something about humans. We all do. But getting yourself pulverized on galactic broadcast isn't going to help anyone. It'll just give them more reason to dismiss us. Maya finally looked up, meeting his earnest brown eyes. Derek was everything she wasn't. Tall, confident, naturally charismatic. He had been one of the more successful human competitors in recent tournaments, using his quick wit and adaptability to outmaneuver opponents who underestimated him. He was also, she realized, genuinely worried about her. What if I told you I had a plan? She asked. I'd ask what it was. Maya smiled, the expression feeling strange on her face after so many months of careful neutrality. You'll have to watch the match to find out. She stood to leave, but Derek caught her wrist gently. Maya, wait. If you're serious about this, at least let us help you train. We've all fought in the tournaments. We know what it's like out there. For a moment, Maya wavered. The offer was tempting, not just for the practical assistance but for the sense of belonging it represented. These were her people, her fellow humans trying to make their way in a galaxy that saw them as the weak link. They were offering to welcome her into their circle, to share their knowledge and experience. But they would also try to change her approach. They would want her to fight like they fought, to use human creativity and determination to overcome superior opponents through clever tactics and unexpected strategies. They wouldn't understand what she had discovered, and even if they did, they would want to study it, to dissect it, to turn it into something that could be taught and replicated. Maya's power didn't work that way. It was deeply personal, tied to emotions and experiences that couldn't be easily shared or explained. More than that, it required a kind of vulnerability that she wasn't sure she could maintain in front of others. Her abilities emerged from the raw, unfiltered chaos of human consciousness, and that chaos needed space to exist without being analyzed or judged. Thank you, she said, gently pulling her wrist free. But I need to do this alone. She left them sitting there, probably wondering if they should report her to the academy counselors for psychological evaluation. Maya didn't blame them for their concern. From their perspective, She was making a suicidal decision based on nothing more than stubborn pride. They had no way of knowing that she had spent the last 6 months becoming something unprecedented in the galaxy's recorded history. The rest of the week passed in a blur of classes and preparation. Maya maintained her usual academic performance, neither excelling nor failing in any dramatic way. To outside observers, she seemed to be treating the upcoming tournament as just another academic requirement, something to be endured rather than embraced. But her nights told a different story. Maya pushed herself harder than ever in the abandoned training rooms, exploring the furthest edges of her abilities. She practiced channeling different emotional states with increasing precision, learning to shift from anger to fear to determination, with the fluid grace of a dancer changing positions. Each emotion unlocked different aspects of her power, and she was beginning to understand how to weave them together into combinations that were more than the sum of their parts. The quantum resonance field that surrounded her during these sessions grew stronger and more complex each night. Maya had rigged sensors to measure the phenomenon, and the readings showed energy patterns that didn't match anything in the Academy's databases. Whatever she was doing, it was genuinely new, a form of physics that had never been documented or studied. On the night before her match, Maya stood in the center of the training room and let herself feel the full weight of what she was about to do. Tomorrow, she would step into an arena watched by billions of beings across the galaxy. She would face an opponent who outweighed her by a factor of 3 and possessed natural strength that could crush steel. And she would do it using abilities that she barely understood, that might fail her at the crucial moment. The smart thing would be to forfeit. She could claim illness, accept academic probation, and return to her comfortable invisibility. No one would blame her for avoiding what everyone assumed would be a brutal and one-sided contest. But as Maya centered herself and felt the familiar tingle of quantum fields responding to her emotional state, she knew she couldn't walk away. This wasn't about winning or losing, about proving human worth or earning galactic respect. This was about showing the universe something it had never seen before, about demonstrating that consciousness and emotion, and the chaotic unpredictability of human experience could reshape reality itself. Maya had always been dismissed because she was quiet, small, unremarkable by conventional standards. Tomorrow, she would show them that the greatest power in the universe sometimes came in the smallest packages, and that the soft-spoken could carry the largest truths. The arena on tournament day buzzed with excited energy from dozens of different species. The Academy's main amphitheater had been reconfigured for the matches, with gravity adjustments to accommodate different physiologies and atmospheric controls to ensure all spectators could breathe comfortably. The stands were packed with students, faculty, and visiting dignitaries from across the galaxy. Maya sat in the competitor preparation area, watching the preliminary matches on the arena's massive holographic displays. The production values were impressive, with multiple camera angles, real-time biometric data for both fighters, and expert commentary provided by former tournament champions from various species. Her fellow human competitors had wished her luck earlier, though their expressions suggested they were already planning her memorial service. Even her academic advisor, Professor Williams, had taken her aside that morning to remind her that academic performance was more important than tournament results, a diplomatic way of telling her that losing quickly and quietly would be preferable to losing spectacularly. Competitor Chen, announced an Academy official, a tall Zephyrian whose crystal blue skin pulsed with formal patterns. "You're up in 10 minutes. Please report to staging area 7 for final preparations." Maya nodded and gathered her few belongings. She had chosen to compete in the Academy's standard training outfit rather than any specialized gear. The simple black bodysuit and soft-soled shoes looked almost primitive compared to the elaborate armor and weapons that many competitors favored, but they allowed her the freedom of movement she would need. As she walked through the corridors toward the staging area, Maya caught glimpses of other students and faculty watching her pass. Some looked curious, others sympathetic. A few seemed actively uncomfortable. She realized that her upcoming match had become something of a spectacle, not because anyone expected her to win, but because the disparity between her and her opponent was so extreme that the match bordered on entertainment. In staging area 7, Maya found Keth 9 completing his pre-match rituals. The Korgan warrior stood nearly 7 feet tall, his gray-green skin bearing the ritual scars that marked his clan affiliation. His natural armor plating gleamed under the preparation lights, and his 4 arms moved through combat forms with mechanical precision. He was exactly what Derek had described, a living weapon designed for one purpose. When Keth 9 noticed her arrival, he paused his routine and studied her with eyes like black stones. "You are small," he observed in the rumbling bass tones characteristic of his species. "This will be quick." It wasn't meant as trash talk or intimidation. Korgans were brutally honest about combat assessment, and Keth 9 was simply stating what appeared to be an obvious tactical reality. Maya found his directness refreshing after days of human concerns and diplomatic faculty warnings. "We'll see," she replied softly. Keth 9 tilted his head slightly, perhaps puzzled by her calm response. "You do not seem afraid. This is unusual for your species when facing mine." Maya considered the observation. Fear was one of her strongest emotional catalysts, but it had to be the right kind of fear, not the paralyzing terror that came from feeling helpless, but the sharp, crystalline fear that emerged when everything important was at stake. Standing here, looking up at this warrior who could literally crush her with his bare hands, Maya felt that fear beginning to build inside her, clean and powerful and ready to be transformed into something extraordinary. "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but fear can be useful if you know how to use it." Before Keth 9 could respond, the arena announcer's voice echoed through the staging area. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, please welcome our next competitors to the Galactic Academy Clash Tournament, representing the Korgan Empire's warrior caste. Undefeated in 12 consecutive matches, Keith 9 of the Iron Mountain clan." The crowd's roar was audible even through the staging area's sound dampening. Keth 9 straightened to his full imposing height and strode toward the arena entrance with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. "And his opponent," the announcer continued, "representing the Human Coalition's Academy program, making her tournament debut, Maya Chen of Earth." The applause for Maya was polite but noticeably less enthusiastic. She could hear scattered cheers from the human section of the stands, but the overall response felt like the kind of appreciation offered to someone about to attempt something brave and doomed. Maya walked into the arena lights feeling the weight of billions of eyes upon her. The amphitheater seemed vast from the competitor's floor, rising in tiers toward a domed ceiling that displayed real-time feeds of the match being broadcast across the galaxy. Somewhere out there, beings from hundreds of worlds were settling in to watch what they expected would be a brief and one-sided demonstration of species hierarchy. As Maya and Keth 9 took their positions at opposite ends of the combat circle, she allowed herself one last moment of doubt. Everything she had worked toward for the past 6 months had led to this moment. In the next few minutes, she would either revolutionize galactic understanding of human potential, or she would be carried off the arena floor on a medical transport. The arena's automated systems announced the standard tournament rules. No weapons, no external assistance, victory by submission or incapacitation, medical override protocols in effect. Maya barely heard the words. She was already beginning to center herself, feeling for the quantum fields that permeated the arena, preparing to transform her fear into something the galaxy had never witnessed before. "Competitors ready?" called the referee, a neutral wisp whose ethereal form flickered with official authority. Keth 9 dropped into a traditional Korgan combat stance, his forearms positioned for maximum striking power. Maya simply stood quietly, her hands at her sides, her breathing slow and controlled. The silence stretched for a heartbeat longer than usual, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "Begin." Keth 9 charged immediately, all 4 arms extending as he crossed the distance between them in 3 massive strides. His approach was textbook Korgan warfare, overwhelming force applied with mechanical precision. The arena floor vibrated under his footsteps, and Maya could hear the sharp intake of breath from the crowd as they anticipated the inevitable conclusion. Maya didn't move until the last possible second. Then, just as Keth 9's first strike would have connected with her head, she let her fear transform. The quantum field around her shifted, reality bending in ways that the arena's sensors struggled to record. Maya's dodge wasn't just fast, it was impossible. She moved through space that shouldn't have existed, slipping between dimensions of possibility like water flowing around a stone. Keth 9's massive fist passed through the air where she had been standing, missing her by distances that seemed to violate causality itself. The crowd fell silent. Even the expert commentators seemed at a loss for words as replay systems struggled to track Maya's movement. One moment she had been directly in front of Keth 9's attack. The next she was standing 3 feet to his left, completely unharmed and apparently unfazed. Keth 9 recovered quickly, pivoting with his secondary arms to launch a follow-up strike. But Maya was already moving again, her fear-enhanced reflexes allowing her to perceive his attacks before he fully committed to them. She flowed around his strikes like smoke, each dodge carrying her further into the quantum resonance state she had spent months learning to control. What is she doing? The commentator's voice finally broke through the arena's stunned silence. The biometric readings are showing energy patterns that don't match any known combat techniques. Maya barely heard them. She was lost in the rhythm of the fight, her consciousness expanding beyond the normal boundaries of human perception. Every emotion was a tool, every feeling a weapon waiting to be deployed. Her fear sharpened her reflexes until she could see the future shadows of Keth-9's attacks. Her determination anchored her to the quantum substrate of reality, making her unmovable when she needed to be. And underneath it all, her anger was building, waiting for the right moment to be unleashed. Keth-9 was breathing heavily now, his methodical fighting style disrupted by an opponent who refused to behave according to any tactical framework he understood. His strikes were becoming wilder, more desperate, as he tried to land even a glancing blow on the small human, who moved like she was made of mist and starlight. "Stand still and fight," he roared, frustration overriding his usual tactical discipline. Maya smiled, and for the first time in the match, she spoke. Her voice carried clearly across the arena, amplified by the quantum field surrounding her. "I am fighting. You just haven't figured out the rules yet." She stopped dodging. Instead, she planted her feet and waited as Keth-9 launched his most powerful attack, all four arms coordinating in a strike that could have shattered reinforced concrete. Maya met his attack with her anger. The impact sent shockwaves through the arena. The floor beneath them cracked, and several spectators in the lower rows were knocked from their seats by the wave of displaced air. But when the dust cleared, Maya was still standing. She had caught Keth-9's primary strike with her bare hands, her small human fingers wrapped around his massive Korgan fist. The quantum resonance around her had become visible now, a shimmering aurora of impossible colors that made the arena's cameras struggle to maintain focus. Maya's anger had transformed her into something beyond normal human limitations, allowing her to channel forces that shouldn't have been accessible to any organic being. "Impossible," whispered someone in the crowd. Keth-9 tried to pull back, but Maya's grip was immovable. Her determination had rooted her to reality itself, making her as fixed and permanent as a mountain. She looked up into his confused, frightened eyes and felt something she had never experienced before. True confidence. "My turn," she said softly. Maya's counterattack came not from any martial arts technique or combat training, but from the pure expression of human emotion made manifest. Her punch traveled through normal space and quantum possibility simultaneously, striking Keth-9 inches multiple dimensions at once. The impact sent the 7-foot warrior flying backward across the arena, his natural armor plating cracked and his systems overwhelmed by forces that his biology had no framework for understanding. The crowd erupted, not in cheers or gasps, but in a chaos of sounds that represented dozens of different species trying to process what they were witnessing. The commentators had given up attempting explanations, instead focusing on the unprecedented biometric readings that showed energy outputs far beyond what should have been possible for any academy student. Keth-9 struggled to his feet, his warrior's pride demanding that he continue fighting despite his obvious confusion and injuries. But Maya was already moving toward him, her emotions cycling through the spectrum of human experience with fluid grace. Each step carried her further into mastery over forces that the galactic community hadn't known existed. "Submit," she called to him, her voice carrying harmonic frequencies that seemed to resonate with the quantum substrate of the arena itself. "There's no shame in losing to something new." For a moment, Keth-9 hesitated. His species valued courage and determination above all else, and surrender was foreign to the Korgan mindset. But he was also intelligent enough to recognize when he faced something beyond his ability to comprehend or overcome. "I yield," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent arena. The referee's announcement seemed anticlimactic after what they had all witnessed. Winner by submission, Maya Chen, of the Human Coalition. But the crowd's reaction was anything but anticlimactic. The silence shattered into a cacophony of voices as thousands of beings from dozens of species tried to process what they had seen. In the VIP section, galactic dignitaries were speaking urgently into communication devices. In the student sections, Maya's fellow humans were staring at her with expressions of awe and disbelief. Maya stood in the center of the arena, the quantum aurora around her slowly fading as she brought her emotions back under control. She felt drained but exhilarated, exhausted but more alive than she had ever been. For 6 months, she had wondered what would happen when she finally revealed her abilities to the galaxy. Now she knew. They were terrified. And they should be. The recording of Maya's match spread across the galactic network faster than any tournament broadcast in history. Within hours, her impossible victory was being analyzed by scientists, strategists, and philosophers from hundreds of worlds. The footage was slowed down, enhanced, and dissected frame by frame, but no one could explain how a small human girl had defeated a trained Korgan warrior using techniques that violated several fundamental laws of physics. Theories proliferated across academic networks and popular forums alike. Some suggested advanced technology hidden beneath Maya's simple training outfit. Others proposed genetic modification or cybernetic enhancement. The more paranoid voices whispered about secret human military programs and conspiracy theories involving Earth's true capabilities. But the truth was simpler and more revolutionary than any of their theories. Maya hadn't used technology or genetic modification or hidden weapons. She had used something that only humans possessed. The chaotic, unpredictable, magnificent storm of consciousness that emerged from the intersection of emotion, will, and possibility. In the days following her victory, Maya found herself at the center of attention that she had spent months avoiding. Representatives from galactic governments requested private audiences. Research institutions offered unprecedented funding for studies of her abilities. Military organizations presented recruitment offers that would have made her the youngest officer in galactic peacekeeping history, but Maya declined them all. She returned to her quiet study habits, her preference for shadowy corners and empty training rooms. She continued to speak softly and avoid the spotlight whenever possible. To outside observers, she seemed to be retreating from the fame her victory had earned her. They didn't understand that Maya's power had never been about gaining recognition or proving humanity's worth to the galaxy. It had been about discovering what was possible when someone stopped trying to fit into other species' expectations and started exploring the full potential of human consciousness. The soft-spoken girl they had all dismissed had become something unprecedented in galactic history, not because she had learned to fight like other species, but because she had learned to fight as something uniquely and impossibly human. Her victory hadn't just defeated one Korgan warrior, it had shattered the galaxy's understanding of what humanity was capable of achieving. And in the quiet corners of the academy, in the empty training rooms and shadowy alcoves she preferred, Maya continued her real work. She had proven that human emotion could reshape reality itself. Now she had to figure out what to do with that knowledge, and how to teach others to access the same impossible power that flowed through human consciousness like an underground river, waiting for someone brave enough to dive beneath the surface and discover what lay hidden in the depths. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. But more importantly, humanity would never look at itself the same way either. Maya Chen had shown them that the weakest link in the galactic community was actually something far more dangerous and wonderful than anyone had ever imagined. The unlimited potential of the human spirit, when it finally stopped apologizing for being different and started celebrating the chaos that made it unique. 3 months later, Maya's techniques had been studied by human researchers across dozens of worlds, but none of them could replicate what she had achieved. The quantum resonance required something that couldn't be taught or programmed or trained into existence. It required the raw, unfiltered experience of being human, with all the messy emotions and contradictory impulses that other species found so baffling. Maya had become not just a champion, but a symbol of something the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, or their determination, or their adaptability. It was their consciousness itself. The beautiful chaos of human awareness that could reach into the quantum foundations of reality and reshape the universe through nothing more than the power of feeling something deeply enough to make it real. The soft-spoken girl who had been dismissed by everyone had spoken a truth that echoed across the stars. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the largest message, and sometimes the greatest power comes from the very qualities that others mistake for weakness. Maya Chen had shown the galaxy what humanity truly was, and the universe would never be the same.